Grace and Michael are introduced as a seemingly picture-perfect couple with their 6-year-old daughter, Emma. However, the cracks in their marriage begin to show. Grace feels neglected and unappreciated as Michael spends more time at work and less with his family. Grace confides in her mother, Evelyn, who offers her unwavering support and subtly plants the idea that perhaps Michael isn't the right man for her. Evelyn reminds Grace of her independence and worth, building her confidence to take control of her life. In contrast, Grace hesitates, reflecting on the good times she and Michael shared. She's torn between trying to fix the marriage and letting it go. Evelyn, however, becomes increasingly vocal about the benefits of starting fresh. Grace stumbles upon a mysterious text on Michael's phone late at night, "Looking forward to seeing you again. I miss you." This sparks doubt and sets the tone for the episodes to come. Confronted with the text, Grace wrestles with whether or not to confront Michael. She shares her discovery with Evelyn, who insists that no man should treat her daughter this way. Evelyn's words are laced with subtle venom toward Michael, but her true intentions remain unclear. Grace decides to confront Michael about the text, but his explanation feels rehearsed. He claims it's a misunderstanding, a work colleague being overly friendly. Grace doesn't buy it but lacks the proof to call him out fully. Meanwhile, Evelyn begins visiting more often, strengthening her bond with Emma and offering Grace constant reassurance. Evelyn's influence over Grace grows, and she starts suggesting that divorce might not only be an option, but the best course of action. Unbeknownst to Grace, Evelyn and Michael have been exchanging covert glances during Evelyn's visits. The audience sees the subtle tension, but Grace remains oblivious. The tension between Grace and Michael escalates. They argue frequently, often over trivial matters that blow out of proportion. One argument leads Grace to spend the night at Evelyn's house, seeking comfort. Evelyn's advice becomes more pointed. "Why stay in a loveless marriage, Grace? You're young, beautiful, and deserving of so much more." Grace begins to believe her mother, even as her heart aches for her daughter, who loves her father dearly. Michael, meanwhile, starts acting even more suspicious, coming home late, avoiding Grace's questions, and keeping his phone locked. Evelyn seems to relish Grace's growing mistrust, but maintains her role as the supportive mother. Grace finds a hidden credit card statement showing charges at a luxury hotel. The final scene shows her breaking down in tears as Evelyn arrives at her apartment, ready to help her move on. Grace takes the plunge and files for divorce, encouraged by Evelyn's relentless persuasion. Michael doesn't fight it. Instead, he signs the papers with a cold, distant demeanor that breaks Grace's heart. As Grace moves out with Emma, Evelyn becomes a constant presence in her life. She helps Grace settle into her new apartment and takes every opportunity to remind her that she made the right decision. However, the audience begins to see Evelyn's darker side. She has secret phone calls and deletes messages from her phone. Meanwhile, Michael begins reaching out to Grace under the guise of wanting to co-parent better. Grace suspects ulterior motives, but doesn't know what they might be. In the final moments, Grace overhears a hushed conversation between Evelyn and an unknown caller. Evelyn's words, "I'll see you tonight. Don't worry, Grace won't suspect a thing," leave the audience in suspense. Grace starts noticing strange coincidences. Evelyn's visits to Michael's house increase, under the pretext of dropping off items for Emma. Michael, once distant, now seems overly eager to accommodate Evelyn. Grace grows suspicious, but brushes it off, thinking she's being paranoid. She starts focusing on rebuilding her life, going on dates, and exploring new hobbies. Meanwhile, Evelyn becomes increasingly involved in Emma's life, sometimes overstepping boundaries. A neighbor casually mentions seeing Evelyn and Michael together late at night. Grace confronts Evelyn, who skillfully deflects the accusation and accuses Grace of being ungrateful for all her help. Grace is left doubting her own instincts. Grace finds a pair of earrings on Michael's couch, the same earrings she gave Evelyn for her birthday. Determined to uncover the truth, Grace decides to investigate. She begins tracking Evelyn's movements and notices a pattern of late-night visits to Michael's house. One night, Grace leaves Emma with a babysitter and decides to confront Evelyn and Michael unannounced. When she arrives, the lights are dim, and the curtains are drawn. Her heart pounds as she approaches the house. She lets herself in with the spare key, calling out for Michael. The silence is deafening. As she makes her way to the bedroom, she hears muffled voices and laughter. Grace opens the door to find Evelyn and Michael in bed together. The look of betrayal on Grace's face contrasts sharply with the shock and guilt on theirs. Grace confronts them both in a fiery, emotional showdown. Evelyn tries to explain, claiming it just happened and wasn't planned. Michael is equally apologetic, but offers little to justify his actions. Grace, devastated, cuts ties with both of them. She demands full custody of Emma and begins seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional trauma. The audience learns through flashbacks that Evelyn had been orchestrating the entire situation from the beginning. Her envy of Grace's life and latent feelings for Michael drove her to manipulate the divorce. In the final scene, Grace finds an old diary entry from her teenage years where she had written, "Mom always wants what I have." The realization dawns that this betrayal may have been years in the making. Grace focuses on rebuilding her life, determined not to let the betrayal define her. She starts a blog about healing from toxic relationships, which gains traction and becomes a source of empowerment for others. Evelyn and Michael, now publicly together, face backlash from family and friends. Their relationship begins to crumble under the weight of guilt and scrutiny. Grace finds solace in her daughter, Emma, and a budding friendship with a supportive coworker. The season ends with Grace smiling for the first time in months, her strength shining through. As she closes her laptop after writing a blog post, she murmurs to herself, "This is just the beginning. Watch out for season 2.